Okay, so when a president gives a big speech, like a State of the Union address or a primetime address, there is always, and I have managed a lot of these processes, a team of young press aides frantically putting together press clips and tweets and summaries of news coverage just to show their bosses, including the president, of course, how widely and positively the speech was covered. And my bet is last night's speech proved to be a bit more challenging for the crack team over at the White House, because here's what they had to work with. The speech now did make the front page of the Washington Post this morning. You can see it on your screen right there, but really just barely. And that piece focuses on the fact that Trump didn't offer any evidence to back up his claims. And then there's the rest of the front page, which focuses on Trump's failure to renovate their Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool and about how Trump's approval rating is down in the 30s. Not exactly a framer to blast out to Trump supporters, is that front page that you see on your screen right now. The LA Times jammed a mention of Trump's speech to the bottom right corner of the front page, just saying you could go to the paper's website if you wanted more info. Hey, everyone, we didn't feel like using ink here in our newspaper, but if you feel like it, you could go hunt around the website and you might find something on there. And the front page of today's New York Times didn't mention Trump's speech at all. And when you look at the coverage of Trump's favorite news source, in Trump's favorite news source of all of them, I think, that one may have prompted some tantrum throwing by the cable news-loving man sitting in the Oval Office. Because after Fox News played all 27 minutes of Trump's speech, and they did, letting him make all his outrageous allegations, they quickly brought on a reporter to give this fun little disclaimer.
Fox News has not seen that evidence yet, is not in a position to evaluate the accuracy of the president's statements and claims at this time.
Okay, then. Now, to add insult to injury, Fox didn't even keep talking about the speech after that. That's pretty much it. They changed the subject almost immediately. So much for Trump's big, splashy, subject-changing, narrative-changing speech. And then this morning, Trump's personal favorite show, Fox and Friends, ignored his speech entirely. Now, Fox and Friends is a 3-hour-long show. They have a lot of time for segments on there. They had time this morning for segments about the World Cup and country music star Toby Keith and the dating app Hinge and WNBA star Caitlin Clark and the Fast and the Furious franchise, of course, which apparently still warrants a conversation. But they didn't have time for a segment about Trump's presidential address. Now, that one's kind of sting. Who knows what he was doing flipping through the channel, maybe throwing remotes, we don't know. And it wasn't just the media leaving Trump hanging last night, because Trump's speech was supposed to be the moment when he finally provided bombshell evidence that our elections were somehow insecure. That was the promise, right? That the 2020 election was stolen and he was going to show us new evidence that had been withheld from him somehow, even though he had received a briefing on it. He said he was releasing newly unredacted intelligence documents to prove it all. But last night, the Washington Post reported that Trump's own CIA director, John Ratcliffe, was notably absent from Trump's intelligence-focused speech. And the minutes after his speech, Ratcliffe posted a statement in which he said a whole lot of words, but none of those words actually backed up the allegations that Trump, his boss, made in his speech. And then after the speech, MS Now's own Von Hilliard got one of the members of Trump's own election task force, the guy who is reportedly one of the big brain conspiracy machines behind all this, to admit that the intelligence documents Trump released yesterday do not prove that any of our recent elections were rigged.
Do you acknowledge that there were no votes changed in 2020?
All I can acknowledge is what the intelligence shows, right? I don't know. The intelligence community has zero evidence that someone has flipped, that a foreign power flipped a vote in 2020, 22, or 24.
That's pretty clear. There we go. That's what we've all been saying for a long time. Now, the man that Vaughn was questioning there was the once conservative journalist, if you could call him that, turned conspiracy theorist John Solomon. He is maybe best known for his work trying to downplay the importance of Trump's ties to Russia, but he's now a short-term employee at the White House as part of Trump's election task force. And as MS Now reported earlier this week, he was one of the main people in charge of declassifying intelligence, because obviously he's qualified to do that, to attempt to prove Trump's allegations about elections. He is supposed to be one of the top people in charge of that. But watch how he literally ran away from Vaughn as Vaughn tried to get him to answer questions last night.
And so the 2020 election was, in fact, the results as we, the American public.
I'm still researching, so let me. This is the first one.
But there's no intelligence.
Not yet.
You gotta go. There is no intelligence that the election would have said that Donald Trump was president.
That's enough.
He's still researching, whatever that means. Now, Trump wanted last night to be his bombshell moment. That's what he wanted it to be. He wanted all the pomp and circumstance and drama of a speech in primetime and document dump that surrounded it as part of the rollout to reignite conspiracy theories about the 2020 election and justify his plans to question the validity of upcoming elections. That's what that whole thing was all about. Remember that cartoon character, Wile E. Coyote, showing him on your screen, just in case you don't remember? Okay? He spent every single episode putting together elaborate plans to chase the Roadrunner, tying himself to rockets to finally catch the Roadrunner, and always blowing himself up in the process. It's kind of what happened to Trump. He tried to make last night's speech stand out from all the other times he has falsely cried election fraud by saying that he was backing up the claims with all the declassified intelligence documents he was having released. Well, not only did those documents not prove Trump's allegations, the documents actually seem to disprove a lot of Trump's points. I mean, for example, despite Trump's claims about election vulnerabilities, the intelligence community showcased how vote tabulation systems would be difficult to manipulate on a wide enough scale to compromise election results. Okay, that was in the documents. And despite Trump's claims that China carried out, quote, the largest compromise of election data in history, resulting in China's illicit acquisition of 220 million U.S. voter files, MS Now found that the document showed something considerably smaller, that China had previously purchased, and that's a key part of it, 2020 voter data from 7 states. Yes, you heard that correctly. It turns out China paid for access to publicly available data, just like anybody else, okay? Like every candidate running for office in a state buys the voter file. And of course, there were also other documents reiterating the intel community's consensus that Beijing has not deployed influence efforts intended to change the outcome of the U.S. presidential election, okay? Sort of like Wile E. Coyote painting a tunnel on a rock wall only to run into it himself, right? Which he certainly has done. He hurt himself on that one. But not only did the documents Trump released debunk his claim that foreign powers were trying to stop him from being elected, the documents Trump released show that the intelligence community believed that at least one foreign power was actively trying to help Trump get elected. Surprise, everyone! And this won't be a surprise. Just like in 2016, Russia was trying to help Trump win in 2020. A document shows our intel communities believed that Russian actors were circulating fake narratives linking mail-in voting to voter fraud. That document was the National Intelligence Council's assessment of foreign threats to the 2020 election from August of 2020. Trump himself would have had access to it at the time. And maybe most damning of all of it is that the document says that, quote, President Putin and senior Russian officials are overseeing efforts by proxies to spread claims about former Vice President Biden. Specifically claims about President Biden's dealings with Ukraine back when he was Obama's vice president, and about individuals tied to the Ukrainian energy company Burisma. Claims that proxy actors affiliated with the Russian government were advancing with U.S. officials. And gee, I wonder who those officials could be. Now, if you remember, that allegation was the basis of Trump's first impeachment. Trump pressured Ukrainian President Zelensky to announce an investigation into Joe Biden and his son Hunter and the Ukrainian energy company Burisma, while holding up nearly $400 million of military assistance to Ukraine. In other words, Trump certainly seems to fit the description of a U.S. official advancing that false narrative with Russian government proxies. And the documents he himself released show that he should have known Russia was behind that narrative, but he kept pushing it anyway. As much as Trump's speech all blew up in his face last night, as funny as it is to watch him trip into all the traps he set up himself, I think it's important to be clear-eyed about how, even though Trump is a buffoon, he is still trying to assault our democracy. And that is still very dangerous. And I don't just mean dangerous in the sense that he could destroy our democratic republic on top of that. There's also the danger that Trump spreading lies like this puts our nation's election officials in danger. I mean, that's part of it, puts them in danger. And when Trump falsely claims our elections are riddled with fraud, he isn't just lying about the abstract concept of elections generally. He's lying about a system made up of people, a system made up of Americans who volunteer their free time and of public officials who have devoted their entire careers to ensuring we have safe and secure elections. Today, Trump's Homeland Security Secretary Mark Wayne threatened state and local election officials with prison time if they don't comply with Trump's demands. Now, that is a disgusting threat on its face, but all of this together is Trump and his administration telegraphing to his base that election workers are up to something nefarious, that they are criminals. Again, these are local officials. These are these are your friends and your neighbors. And Trump is riling up his base against them. And unfortunately, we have been here before. Before the violence around the 2020 election reached its peak on January 6th, Trump had turned his base's conspiracy-fueled hatred toward our nation's election workers. He told his base that the election was being stolen from them. He lied, and he made real people suffer because of it.